look at the individual candidates.
Yeah,
so you
sure.
had this excellent Green Party candidate,
Really
a
first
plumber,
class.
for God's sake, a woman plumber. Then you have this lunatic Matt Goodwin for Reform. Reform picked the wrong candidate. They reached for the furthest of the nutters within their spectrum.
The problem for Starmer was that he framed this by-election explicitly, I mean absolutely verbatim almost, as the only party that could beat Reform is Labour. And the voters told him to stuff it.
Yeah, the clock is ticking.
But the fact is that, Reform did double their vote, so they remain in contention. The Greens have shown they can beat Reform, which is great. The trouble is Labour has absolutely no reform-busting power at the moment.
Yeah, it's a mess, and it has been for some time. And
but it doesn't have to be a mess. It doesn't have to be a mess. I mean, what she showed was that actually, it's not really that complex. What Labour seems to me to be collectively not yet ready to do is take a massive risk, because it will be a risk.
Yeah, but there's a gun to their head now. Hello and happy Friday morning.
Happy Friday morning, everyone.
It's it's a day that feels historic. Sometimes these days come and they feel enormous, and then this time next week they feel less so. But I feel like we are climbing or maybe descending a mountain is the better analogy, step by step, and there is a destination that is visible in sight now, and it's not a pretty destination for Keir Starmer.
Not for Keir Starmer, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we're just processing the results of the Gorton and Den by-election, and there's a lot there. I mean, one is the Green surge is real. There's no doubt that we've discussed this quite a bit, haven't we, Matt, on the pod, and interest in Zach Polanski and his phenomenon. Obviously, it is now real and something we're going to be talking about a lot.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second is that Reform can be beaten. I mean, Reform would have, I think, pre-Polanski hoped to win this seat. They didn't.
Yeah.
They doubled their vote, but they didn't win it. But Keir Starmer can't beat Reform.
Yeah, that's so true.
So that's my take from it, really.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's stark. I mean, obviously the numbers are the numbers, and Labour have finished a poor third. Out of three.
in a seat they did very well with in 2014.
They've lost more than half of their vote.
Exactly.
It's just bad news, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. And you pick that up from the defensive nature, from some of the commentary that's coming out of the cabinet. Heidi Alexander this morning, I just thought an absurd performance. Blaming everybody but themselves.
Yeah, really. And taking umbrage at Nick Robinson on today, saying that one of the problems Labour had was that it was associated with rich friends. Well,
yeah.
I think we all agree that Hannah Spencer, the victorious Green candidate's speech, victory speech, was a kind of extraordinary moment, a model of its kind.
Yeah.
And she was talking about things that I think Labour should be talking about, which is people, not just working class people, middle class people who feel they're not getting a fair shake, that they are, they look at this elite, they look at former Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson being arrested, and they can't. And she said, it was interesting. She said they can't even go on holiday ever.
Yeah.
And I thought how far the Greens have come as a kind of political populist movement, because, they used to perfectly reasonably mainly just talk about climate change, a few other things. But here was a victorious and clearly excellent Green candidate talking about the things that I think animate a huge proportion of the population.
Well, Matt, let's talk about the candidates a little bit, because I think they are all they are so critical to what's happened. Everyone's talking about the parties, and there's a lot going on, but look at the individual candidates. So you had this excellent Green Party candidate,
really
a
first
plumber,
class.
for God's sake, a woman plumber, fantastic, right? With 4 rescue greyhounds, and she's of the place, absolutely perfect, and so articulate, and just absolutely nailed the question about what do you get if you're a hard-working person in this country? You get sod all, right? So she nailed it. Then you have this lunatic Matt Goodwin for Reform. Reform picked the wrong candidate. They reached for the furthest of the nutters within their spectrum, and he comes out this morning and blames the loss on a coalition of Islamists. Right,
Yeah,
not so. So he's labelled all of the Muslims there as Islamists and woke progressives. He is Nigel Farage's problem, and people like him because the more they are loose in the wild, the more people go, hold on a minute, this guy is a bit of a berserker.
Yeah.
And then the Labour Party candidate, exactly. Who I don't even know. You know, who was he?
Well,
no one knows.
It was a she. It was Angelica Stoyer, right? But
right.
To your point, Matt, I had to look it up.
Yeah, no one knows. And because, but who could it have been, Matt? Who could it have been?
We all know the answer. It could have been Andy Burnham. And Keir Starmer, in his wisdom, decided not to let Andy Burnham have a tilt at this because it would have caused a by-election in the Greater Manchester mayoralty. And as a consequence, Labour and more specifically Keir Starmer have suffered a catastrophic by-election defeat leading up to huge electoral test in May.
Yeah.
So great work.
This is where to me the flaw in Starmer is that he thought he was taking a big strategic decision by keeping Burnham in his place.
Yes.
But actually it wasn't. It was a short-term tactical thing that bought him. I don't know what it bought him, but it's cost him. I think it's cost him the seat. Put it this way. Imagine if Andy Burnham, the conversation we'd be having right now, if Andy Burnham had been elected last night as the MP. Now, it's still a conversation that evolves around, does Keir Starmer survive this? But it's a conversation that is much more constructive for the national interest. Is Keir Starmer about to be replaced by somebody who is more popular within the Labour movement, who can deliver a Labour manifesto that people can get behind? Instead, we're now asked, is Britain about to swing behind Zach Polanski?
Well, exactly. And what's so interesting about this, Matt, is that Labour really thought they were going to win up until relatively late in the day yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons that Keir Starmer had been kept in a sort of holding pattern quite close to the constituency this week was because they genuinely thought that they were going to win and that he should turn up at the count and be around to celebrate it with the victorious new Labour MP. And that didn't happen. And this was a crushing defeat. The Greens won 40% of the vote. They've never won more than 10% in a by-election. That was Somerset and Froome, I think. Somerton and Froome in 2023. A huge quantum leap for them, and a massive destruction of the Labour position. I think it really is extraordinary that a party that only a couple of years ago was just talking about legitimate, interesting stuff like climate change has now occupied that whole space of, progressive populism. Now, people have talked rightly about, is Zach Polanski ready? No. But fair play to him today.
100%.
They played an absolute blinder in the constituency.
Listen, I've got to say the criticism of Zach Polanski is that he's very raw. He's got some policies that are easy bait for people like the Daily Mail to make him look like a nutcase, right? As things get closer, especially around drugs, right? Yeah. He was on the radio, and I thought it was slightly unfair and missing the point for Nick Robinson to zoom the conversation onto, well, what are you going to do about cocaine? Are you going to make that free for everybody? It's not really the point of what's happening, but it will become more that these will be the sticks that are used to beat him with. But what he's done in terms of taking a moribund party with a moribund single issue party and has turned it into basically the socialist movement of Great Britain within a matter of months is extraordinary.
I put a twist on that, actually, because I know that a lot of people are going to be biffing the Greens in the days to come as Corbynite and old left and all the rest of it. But I don't think that's true. I think that one of the reasons that Hannah Spencer's speech was so significant was it was really obviously it was coming from the left, but it was really tied into people's concerns in 2026.
Yeah.
It was a very contemporary speech. It wasn't a nostalgic speech. It wasn't saying, let's go back to the 1970s or even the 1990s. It was saying, today, right now, the system is rigged. You work hard and you don't get anything out of it. Now, that is the winning message.
Yes.
And it's a problem, of course, for Farage as well as for Starmer, because, Farage is relying on the idea, which is looking a little bit less certain today, a lot less certain, that he can appeal to voters just on a sort of populist basis. And here come the Greens saying, no, we offer this without all the moral taint of reform, which you rightly mentioned in respect to Matt Goodwin. So I think that this is a real problem for Farage, but more immediately, it's a real problem for Starmer, because he has now Farage on his right and the Greens for real on his left. And this spin that I texted you earlier that I got, which is, oh, well, don't worry about it because the Greens can only win in inner cities and multi-ethnic seats. Well, that's quite a lot of seats, even if that's true.
Yeah.
So I think that after the Caerphilly by-election for the Senate in October, there was a kind of comfort blanket, which was, what's great is that, which Plaid Cymru won, which is that wherever reform can be beaten, people will vote for the anti-reform candidate. Well, there is a measure of truth in that. But the problem for Starmer was that he framed this by-election explicitly, I mean, absolutely verbatim almost, as the only party that can beat reform is Labour. And the voters told him to stuff it.
Yeah.
They
just
really
didn't believe
did.
it. Yeah.
They didn't believe him. And I kind of understand why.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Now, obviously the clock is ticking. The countdown to July, the latest they can go is July 2029, right? Which sounds like it's a long way away, but it's
not though.
It's 175 weeks away, right?
Is it? Oh, there you go.
So you take out all of the bloody holidays. That they go. They've got about 100 weeks of government.
Yes.
To try and prove that they are this is what's depressing, is that their mission really to prove that they're the party to take on reform, that has mutated massively now, and it's in some ways it's a much clearer challenge they've got, which is to forget the others, forget the Greens, forget bloody reform. What is Labour, right? What does Labour stand for, and who can articulate it? Because it's not Keir, right? I'm sorry, it isn't Keir. We've said it for a long time. And there are still people today, and just to steel man it, there are economic indicators that are on the up. I thought he could put in a good performance at PMQs last week. I did. I thought he was bold and convincing, and there was a sense of recovery. But in 175 weeks of time frame to get to a position where they can convincingly beat not only reform but the Green Party, who have stolen their clothes really, and find that they fit them very well. I think that is mission impossible for Keir Starmer. I don't think he will wait till, I'd be astonished if he walks out now.
Me too.
But do we really want a guy whose abiding principle now is that he's never been beaten? No one's put me down. Well, yeah, the country's getting put down.
That was David Cameron's argument before the Brexit referendum.
That's right.
In terms, and
it's such a stupid argument, because
it's
the one thing we know about political life is that it always ends in failure.
Eventually,
it's just a question of when.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's been on a losing streak since the local elections last May.
Yeah,
and Sarah Runcorn won Sarah Putchin won the Runcorn by-election for reform then, and the locals were terrible, and now we've got this. I think there's a problem too for the Labour Party, which was it came very close to getting rid of him only a few days ago over the whole Mandelson thing. Anna Sarwar, the Labour leader in Scotland, came out and said, Keir Starmer's got to go. And then, as we discussed at the time, the cabinet had it looked over the precipice and thought, no, into the abyss, and stepped back. Well, you can only afford to do that so many times. If you're serious about recovery, you have to at some point do what the Conservatives did in 1990, which is get rid of Thatcher and replace her with John Major, which, they did win in 1992. Of course, they lost catastrophically in 97. But what Labour seems to me to be collectively not yet ready to do is take a massive risk, because it will be a risk.
Yeah, but there's a gun to their head now. They're going to have to.
And not to labour the metaphor, but that how many bullets does the gun have to fire before they get the message? This was really serious, I think, and it ought to be a matter of deep embarrassment, to be honest, for the Labour Party, for the Labour government, that it has been so humiliated by what is, an insurgent party. And in fact, two parties that, in effect, because the Green Party of Polanski is a new party. It's not the old Green Party. You essentially have two new parties that are taking turns in humiliating, the great Labour Party. And by the way, I mean, it's a footnote just for completeness. The Conservative Party lost its deposit.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a situation here where the two main parties are, one is almost literally flatlining, the Conservative Party, and the other one is in dire existential trouble. This is such a period of change and churn.
And Matt, just to mention as well, that we haven't even mentioned, not at the bloody races, the Liberal Democrats. Not at the races, right?
I mean, this was a seat that in past times, would have been an absolute natural for the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
There's a combination of economic discontent, anger about Gaza, all these factors that would have normally played to a Lib Dem candidate. Nowhere.
Yeah, it's such a tragedy because that the space. If you're looking at ground evacuated by Labour towards the left, the centre left. It's exactly where Ed Davey should be picking up points day in, day out, but it's not happening. It's not happening. So again, maybe the Lib Dems need to look at who's in charge there.
All of the three historical parties need to look at their legacy parties need to look at very hard at where they are. I mean, one thing, I don't know what you think about, but one thing I'm becoming less persuaded by was there was an argument back end of last year that perhaps the best outcome was a sort of rainbow coalition election where very clever tactical voting would lead to a Labour, Green, Lib Dem government of some composition. I'm not sure that's on offer, because I think that the what people are doing at the moment is saying, we really hate you.
Yes.
Main parties, we really hate you.
That's right.
So that Labour it's not just a question of sort of hunkering down and winning where it should win and then letting the Lib Dems or the Greens win elsewhere and hoping that will lead to a overall majority against reform. That's a foolish strategy. Labour needs to pursue a winning strategy. It can't do that with Starmer. I'm not sure who the natural leader is. I really hope Burnham gets back into Parliament in time for the leadership contest. That's been made appreciably more difficult by the NEC, but I do think he's the strongest candidate.
Yeah,
we'll see.
But even now, I'm afraid Starmer's legacy around Burnham it's disastrous. Whatever happens now, because
it is.
Even if he gets handed a safe seat and he becomes leader, the first thing he's going to inherit is a disaster in Manchester.
Yeah, a disaster in Manchester, and also just a disaster, which is that there's always a problem with parties. How long do you have to take before the brand becomes irreparable, except for a long period in opposition where there's a complete, overhaul? And one of the worries I have in this is that the longer Starmer holds on, the more people, because people have lives, they don't agonize about politics in the way that journalists do. My worry is here that people will have actually already made their mind up about the Labour Party.
I think I just push back slightly on that. I think I agree with the sentiment, but I think people are agonizing about politics right now. I think they,
Well,
and whether, but I know what you mean, but I think to broaden out the language a little bit, I think people are at their bloody wits' end with politics.
well,
You know?
that's a better way of framing it. And
Yeah.
I suppose in a way, if I look at it like that, then I double down and say the more they're looking at politics, the more they have just made their mind up about
Yeah.
Labour. I
Yeah.
mean, what I suppose is my concern is that it's reached a point now where I'm skeptical that the country is out there thinking, "Wow, I really hope they get rid of Keir Starmer, so I
Yeah.
can."
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
So this assumption that the electorate is longing to come home to Labour, if only the right leaders.
Yes.
Well, it might, but
That's such a good point.
the longer this goes on, the harder that becomes. And we come back to our kind of mantra, which is stop reform. Great result last night in that respect. But the fact is that, reform did double their vote. So they remain in contention. The Greens have shown they can beat reform, which is great. The trouble is Labour has absolutely no reform busting power at the moment.
Yeah.
None.
Because they've tried to emulate their policies. And
yes,
it's interesting. I've heard the jury trial issue being thrown up regularly now,
a lot
from within Labour as how can we, the Labour Party, be pursuing this? And at face value, it could be presented as a, why is that a Labour issue? It needn't be. It can just be a justice efficiency issue. It could be presented as that, but it is being thrown up now in a bitterness from within Labour about we're looking in the wrong places, and that I think is definitely true. And they go on about breakfast clubs and potholes and all of this business. Yeah. And they go on now increasingly with the pound in your pocket and abstract things. Now, fair enough. If mortgage rates start coming down, that's a good tick. If inflation starts coming down, that's also a good tick. But we saw with Joe Biden that ultimately the economic performance it's not the economy, stupid, anymore. It's the feeling of progress.
It's the feeling, exactly.
And people say, facts don't care about feelings and all of that. Yeah, but feelings don't care about facts either.
That's the point. That's exactly it.
We are living in a time of vibes, and the vibes around this current Labour government are really, really bad. Now, you can, as people do, well, who's creating the vibes? The media, people like you and I. I still don't think that's fair. I think there's some fairness in that, of course. I just saw a dear subscriber of ours and a listener who lives in Gloucester emailed me the delivery sheet that was accidentally dropped in by the newspaper deliverer as he got his New World delivered, and the list. So this is in Gloucestershire, right? So there's one copy of the New World on this guy's delivery round, 48 copies of the Daily Mail, right?
Right.
So, and 5 copies of the Guardian. So this is the imbalance. There is an imbalance, and the knives have been out for Starmer for a long time. But my position is still that is like complaining about the weather. That is that is just the thing you've got to deal with.
Just the way it is. Yeah. And I think that another futile argument that we're not us, but will be prevalent in the next few days is there'll be a really furious argument about pivoting right or pivoting left, right?
Yes.
Don't forget about that. Pivot to the future. The reason Hannah Spencer spoke so well.
That is, mate, right? that is brilliant, by the way.
It's like, I totally get the anger at the Morgan McSweeney strategy of trying to shadow reform. That was clearly a mistake, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Take that. But this argument that, what Labour needs to do now is go back to its soft left origins. Well, there are things in the soft left sort of suite of policies that are worth having. But the really great thing, the reason the Hannah Spencer speech is such a sort of, cut out and keep text is she's talking about the now and what to do about it in the future.
Yes.
And, parties win when they own the future.
Yeah, that's a great slogan. If they don't steal that, they're idiots. Pivot to the future.
But actually, Bill Clinton came out. He said, but we're in the future business, which is that especially progressive parties, but to be honest, all parties win when the voters go, they're going to, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of obvious. they're the party that are going to make my life and my kids' lives better in 2 years' time, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter this sort of argument about left versus right, the ideological spectrum. I mean, it's good for idiot columnists like me and whatever, but the truth is that if you want to win an election, you have to persuade the voters that you're going to come in and make things better for them in 5 years. I mean, that's it. That's all it is.
That's it. That's
and Labour is nowhere on that. Tories are nowhere on that.
It's a mess, and it has been for some time. And
but it doesn't have to be a mess. It doesn't have to be a mess. I mean, what she showed was that actually, the it's not really that complex.
Well, the other thing, Matt, is that obviously I'm a lifelong Labour voter, and I consider myself Labour through and through. But there's no reason why anybody under the age of 40 would need to consider themselves like that. They're not tribal in that way anymore. So, I think part of what is so disappointing and confusing and discombobulating for people like me is the state of the Labour Party. But
yes, I agree.
But that's stuff comes and stuff goes. Exactly. So maybe the future has got a different colour.
Look, I mean, who would have thought back to 1993 when John Smith was leader of the Labour Party. Great man, right? A genuinely great man. But he wasn't a sort of thrilling person. He wasn't someone who energized the nation. Then, tragically, he died. And suddenly Blair and Brown were leading the Labour Party. And the nation and then, the world was set ablaze by these two. So things can change very quickly. But what you have to do is really be just looking over the horizon.
Yeah.
We talk all the time about things like inequality, accountability. You mentioned juries. I think that's a big thing. AI, these are the things that people are talking about, worrying about. Is AI, not because they care about ChatGPT, but because they're worried that AI is going to take their kids' jobs.
Yeah.
There's a huge progressive opportunity out there. This by-election shows that the right progressive offering can absolutely smash it.
Yeah. Listen, Jack Dorsey, who used to run Twitter and now runs a company, a tech payments company called Square. They just sacked 6,000 people out of 10,000 employees yesterday because AI is the future. Now, where is the conversation around that? Because they're a company, a big company at the sharp edge of that, but it's coming for everybody. So when we're talking about having a fucking supercomputer in Edinburgh to make ourselves AI, what does that mean? People don't give a shit about that. They don't care about supercomputers. What they want to know is, will my kid, who's just spent 3 years and accumulated 60 grand's worth of debt doing a sociology course or a liberal arts course or pick any humanities course you want, what is that person, what's my kid going to be doing in 4 years' time?
And even if your kid has been doing a STEM course, which used to be this argument that would lead automatically to an affluent future. Well, AI is charging into that space too.
Yeah.
And so I think at least you have to have an answer. Now, the populist right, especially in America, is moving into a kind of Luddite position, which is turn AI off. That's the Tucker Carlson answer. What's the progressive answer to this? I don't know. I wish I did.
Well, we're about to explore it in the New World, by the way. We've got a great feature about how AI, parts of it, will, improve agriculture, health, education, all of this. So there is a conversation.
There are answers, right?
Yeah.
As you say, the Starmer speech on AI was historically terrible. It was sort of data centers mean growth. No, they don't. And also, people are worried about it at a much more personal level, which is we need politicians that speak. Again, it's so obvious when you say it, that actually see people and speak to them about what they're worried about. I mean, we shouldn't have to spell this out, but unfortunately, because we have such a pathologically technocratic prime minister, we do.
Yeah.
And Labour has to, in this sense, it does have to go back to its roots, which is Labour is the party, or meant to be the party of the majority, the great mass of people out there who are worried about their day-to-day lives. That's it. And they have somewhere along the line lost that talent. But I don't think that I think there are plenty of people in the Labour ranks who have that talent. Burnham's one of them.
Yeah. All right. Listen, that was quite a good blast. That half an hour of response to what's happened this morning. But I guess over the weekend the picture will firm up. Who knows what will happen? Maybe he'll come to his own conclusions. You know, and
who knows? Who knows?
And
it's a big day, Matt. It really is.
I think it is a big day, and I think when we come back on, we've got our Q&A on Sunday, which I know, dear listeners, you'll tune into. And we'll be back at the very latest next Thursday.
At the latest.
But I suspect something in my water.
I have a funny feeling.
Something in my water saying we might speak sooner. We might speak
well,
sooner.
I look forward to that, mate.
Yeah. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Subscribe to The New World at thenewworld.co.uk/2Mats. Look at us on Substack. If you just Google The New World Substack, you'll see our shiny new site on Substack, which we're all very excited about. Send in your questions for Sunday's Q&A to 2mats@tnepublishing.com. And thank you to the third Matt Withers, for producing the show. And with that, have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.